Welcome back, everyone, for the first time in a while, and it will be the first time for a while because I am leaving. I am leaving tomorrow for this fun camp somewhere else. I'll be there for 4 weeks. So I will be uploading videos. I'll probably upload some AP score reactions, and I might also do some chess content. I might do some vlogs. I'll have some chess friends there as well, maybe. Let's just jump into these games. I still have 5 left. I'm just going to do them all in this video. I don't care if this video is 15 minutes long. I don't even care how many views it gets. I just want to get these games done, so I can just move on and then see what happens with this channel from later on. I'm not giving up on the channel, just to be clear, but you might not see some uploads for a bit because I will be quite locked in. So this first game, I'm black, and my opponent is 2200. I have 2 out of 2, so if I win this game, I'll be in really good shape. Even if I draw, I'll still be really good with 2.5 out of 3. And if I lose, then 2 out of 3, that's still not bad, but my goal here is probably to just get at least a draw or try to win if it's possible. So I play the Accelerated Dragon as usual, and my opponent plays this move knight to b3, which is an unusual move, but it is a move. And I play d6, bishop e6, castle, 3 normal moves. And I'll play this move knight to a5. And basically what I'm trying to do is do stuff. But back here, you might notice that when white plays this move, queen to d2, it allows moves like knight to g4 and stuff, and hitting the bishop. And this is usually how you punish white not playing f3. However, I decided not to do this for some reason. And there's also other moves I could have played, but I'm not going to show those. So I played knight to a5, which is quite a mistake because it just allows him to trade. And after he trades, since he played this move king to b1, if I take, then he can actually take here. And then he just wins a pawn. And if I go back, then this actually hangs a pawn on a7. And I'll actually... or does it? Wait. No, there was another move. Because if he takes immediately, then I actually take, and I can trap the bishop with b6, I think. Yeah. However, he can move the knight first, attacking the bishop, and now he's going to basically have the 2 bishops, which is pretty good. Or he can start pushing pawns. Now, I was expecting to take, but instead he goes bishop to d4. And now, knight a5 was a mistake, so the best move is actually to just go back and repeat and do something better, which I actually considered, but I didn't. And that could be something like a6 or knight to e5, trying to go to c4 like this. But instead I take, which is a mistake because now I can take, and I can't actually push these pawns very easily, and then he can start pushing his pawns. So strategically, it's already a lot easier for white to make moves. So I play a6, now he starts going h4, I play h5, plays bishop e2, preparing g4, and now plays move king to h7. And I spent a lot of time here, I was looking at queen to a5, but it doesn't work right now because of knight to d5, and this would attack this pawn. I can also trade bishops, which I was also looking at. However, I didn't like the after takes and takes. I could just push pawns anyways, and now I can't even take. I can't take the pawn because I don't have my knight here. And even if I did have my knight, it probably isn't a good idea to take the pawn anyways. But this also didn't look too good. So I decided to play king h7 to step out of this knight to d5 check on e7. So now I can play queen to a5 and try to guard like across the board or something. So my opponent takes, and plays f4. These are all the best moves. And now I play knight to g3. And at this point, I have basically 2 options. I can take on e2, or I can sack the rook. So if I sack the rook, then the idea is he can't take with the queen because then I take and I take this, and I win a piece because I have another fork. So he can't take with the queen, but he can take with other stuff. He can take with this, and then I take, and take. Or he can take, or he can check me first. No. Or he can, what was it again? He can take. Oh, okay, yeah. I was gonna take on e4 and then take on c3. So something like this. But when I take on e4, he can check me. He can check me. Now it has to go back, and now I'm just at an exchange. and then like rook g5 and stack, and then play h5, and that's probably not good. And additionally, he can also play rook takes g3, taking advantage of the pin, and now I have to go to c5. Now he can check me. My king has to go somewhere, and then play b. I was thinking he would play b4, but I guess I can check. But instead, you can just play h4, h5, or f5. And even though white's not a material, this is absolutely really bad for black. So instead I take, and basically I just try to hold on. However, I'm not holding on because f5 cuts off the queen, and now h5. So now I basically have to just let this pawn sit here. So now I play b5, he goes here, and now he's obviously just going to check me and open up the file, and then sauce me on the side of the board. So I basically just get desperate now and take this pawn. And he actually makes a pretty big mistake. He checks me as expecting me to take and take. And if I go here, then he just goes rook to g1 and threatens queen to g8 checkmate. However, he missed that I could just block with the bishop. So getting out of the attack and stopping the check, and then taking this pawn next. So at this point, now he gets really worried. He starts spending a lot of time. However, unfortunately for me, his position was so good that even after such a big blunder, he's still winning. So he goes rook g1. All my moves are forced. I have to go queen g5 to stop it. Queen f2, I go queen c5. And now I was trying to bait him into taking, because if he takes, then I can actually take. And then, like, it looks like he's winning a piece, but once he wins the piece, I can, like, trick him. I can basically win the knight back or something like this. For example, I can take. If he takes with the knight, then I actually go rook g8, and I'm winning this back. If he takes with the rook, then I go e5. Then I can take this, and he's up a pawn, but this is probably drawable. So he doesn't take, he goes to h2 instead. Now I go rook h8, he goes knight d5, nice move cutting off the queen. Also threatening to go to f4, so now I'm in quite a bit of trouble. He's just going to go to f4 and take my bishop is the problem. So I try to step out of the pin, and he cannot go to h6 because he hangs the rook. However, he can attack my bishop using this move queen to g2, and it's really unfortunate that I cannot take on e4 and try to do this, because he actually has mate in 2 with queen to g8 check, and making a queen like this, queen g8 checkmate. So I also can't take this because he just checkmates me in 2 moves no matter where I go. So I have to sack the queen, and I'm just down a piece. So after a few more moves, I just resign, and I also have like a minute with 30-second increments. So I basically put the bishop here, and then realized it was a fork, so I just resigned immediately. So this was a really sad game. My opponent kind of did something unexpected in the opening, and I could have played better moves in the opening also. And then he just played better in the middle game also. Okay, so let's go to the next game. Hopefully I can bounce back from that game. Now I have white against a 1900, so this is a really good opportunity to get to 3 out of 4, which would put me in a good spot heading into the 5th round. So my opponent plays the Najdorf, and this variation where he goes knight d7 first without playing e6. And I actually played a training game like a few days before this tournament, actually. And my opponent played this exact line also, and my opponent was like a 2100. So I had this opening against the 2100, and then he played this exact moves, queen to c5, and in that game I actually took this knight, which is not the best. And after I analyzed the game, and I found that queen e3 is another move. Okay, so I analyzed like a lot of lines here. So I knew exactly what to do. I was playing basically instantly, and my opponent was spending time. So I was very happy with that, because my opponent clearly didn't know this line as much as me, because I had just played it and looked over it. So I go here, attack the queen, play bishop here to trade. So I got doubled pawns, however I am up a pawn because he sacked a pawn here. And I've doubled pawns, however his pieces are less developed than me, so I have a lot of open lines. So he goes to e5, I castle. He cannot take this pawn with anything. If it takes to the rook, I go bishop to f4. This is a fork. If he takes with a knight, then I also take with the bishop. I also play bishop f4. And if he takes and takes, I was thinking I could go queen to f2, and this would be good. Apparently, it's more close to equal. However, I was pretty happy with the queen if he did do this. Okay, and also, if I don't do that, I can also play bishop to e2, which is interesting to cut off the knight. And then I can go bishop to f4 next. Okay, so instead I castle and instead he goes knight to b6. He's trying to go to a4 and attack this pawn on c3. So I attack the queen once, and then I would really like to put this bishop on a square like f3, because then I could activate my rooks and try to play e5 and attack him. But wherever I put the bishop, it's blocking a file. e2 blocks the e file, and d3 blocks the d file. And I can't go to c4, unfortunately. So my plan is to go to play bishop to g3, and then stop knight f2, and then move this bishop, and then use my rook. So another idea is just to play h3 to kick the knight, and even though it doesn't kick the knight immediately, after I play bishop e2, I can kick the knight, and then go to f3. Or something, maybe. Okay, so bishop f4, bishop g3, and then he goes knight f4. Now I go knight to d4, blocking the queen. He goes bishop to d7, and now he basically is trying to use the rook. However, I can play bishop to to c4 now, because he moved the bishop knight off of f6. So he goes here, now I go rook to f1, attacking the queen, and he basically has no choice but to sack the queen, because if he moves the queen, that's obviously no good. I just take. If he moves like here, I still just take. And this is absolutely not good, because I can just go bishop f4, and his king is here. So he sacks the queen, takes back with the knight, and now, okay, what's going on? He's attacking this pawn, he's attacking this pawn twice, so I decided to guard the center pawn, because this pawn's doubled anyways. He goes knight takes c3. I go queen d3, attacking the rook. These are all the best moves. He goes b5, protecting the rook, and now I go a3, which is a solid move. I'm technically fine with him taking. I could play e5 immediately, but I didn't like that after king to b2 and knight to b4. I had to move the queen again. I could go to like d2 or something, and I still have this. And you can like take, and this is probably good, but I just didn't see a reason for him to allow him to take on a2. So I played a3 first. Okay, now it goes e5. And he attacks my knight. So his plan is to make me move the knight, like to f3, and then he can take this pawn. And now my best move is to take and get this like double attack or something. This would have been interesting. I have a queen for a rook and two knights. However, his king is really weak. So going to f3 is probably okay, because I want to take next. However, I went to f5 because I saw that if he takes with the bishop, I can take on d6 and attack the knight and attack the bishop and attack e5. And I thought this would just be really good. But similar to the last game where the bishop was attacked and it just moved, blocking something, the bishop goes to e6, blocking the queen, and I just missed this, which is really bad considering what happened in the game before. But okay, so I take with the bishop. Now I'm attacking this. I'm attacking this. I'm just attacking this knight. If he goes rook h6, which I was hoping for, I can take and then backwards fork like this. I was hoping he would miss it, but he didn't. But still, this is an okay position. This is a pretty good position for me. He chooses to take the pawn with the knight, so attacking my queen, so I can't take the rook. I check, and then I go to b7, attacking the knight. Now he castles, so he can castle because he hasn't moved the king or the rook, even though the rook is attacked, so that's not a rule. You can castle here. So I take, and now, okay, what's going on? I have a pawn and a queen for two rooks. Bishop's off opposite color, king is very weak. My king is probably safer. So, and my opponent also has like 5 minutes. Meanwhile, I have about 19. So I should be feeling pretty good about my chances here to win, even if it's not winning exactly on the board. So my opponent plays the natural move rook c4, trying to stack. And now, try to pause the video and see how you would deal with moving. How you would deal with this attack on the queen. So there's a couple options. I can move the queen to b7, trying to attack this pawn. I can go to e3, trying to go to h6. I can go to e2, trying to go to h5. I can go to f3, trying to go to h5. I can go to d3, trying to go to g3. These are all nice ideas. I can also block with the bishop on d4 and try to make a battery like this. So try to pause the video briefly and choose which one of these you would go for. So if it said queen 2, you are correct, because any of those queen moves are better than what I played in the game, which is bishop to d4, which is a absolutely horrible move, and it blunders a level 8 puzzle rush. So try to pause the video again and see what is the problem after bishop to d4, because if rook d8, then I can just play c3 and protect the bishop. So if you saw that rook to d8 and c3 doesn't work because of rook takes d4, congratulations, you can get past number 8 on Puzzle Rush, and I can't because the reason I missed this is because I was looking at all these queen moves, and in all these queen moves, like there was this random thing that I didn't like it wasn't losing or not winning. I just didn't like something about it. So like, okay, queen moves, I don't really like them. I'm just gonna keep the queen in the center and play bishop to d4. It has to be fine. I'm just gonna play c3, and the bishop's gonna be really really solid on the square. And I just completely missed this because I didn't do enough Puzzle Rush. So always do Puzzle Rush during your tournaments. Stay sharp. You have to stay sharp with the tactics. So unfortunately, this just means I lose the game. So I go queen 3, and now he takes. I lose my queen. I could have kept the game going with like a. I couldn't really keep the game going because he just has 2 rooks, and my king's like this, and he has a bishop. Like if I check, he just goes back, and if I take, he just takes. And if I go here, it's going to lead to checkmate very, very soon. So, I'm kind of tilted here. I just make a move and try to like set up a perpetual check, but he just takes, and I have to take, and he pins me. And luckily, I do get to resign after this because he just makes a passed pawn, and he's just going to move his king in, and he has a bishop, and I don't. So very sadly, I lose this game. Was I ever completely winning? I mean, I had a queen, and he did not. I had a queen for a rook and I had a queen and a pawn for a rook and bishop for a rook and something, rook and a minor piece. And my king was he did have a lot of activity, but if I used my time correctly, I probably should have figured it out, especially with his low time. But I just made one careless move and I lost the game. So chess sucks. Let's go on to the next game. So now I'm black. I'm playing 1900, so I'm kind of tilted here, but a win here would be nice. So we get this opening, and I get this a lot online with this bishop c4, queen a5, and okay. So we get these moves. So I play rook c8. Another move is knight takes d4, bishop c6, and after e5, I just take, and then knight goes to h5. If white goes e5, so white usually just goes queen to d3, and then we get basically more or less normal game. I try to trade the dark square bishops and play an endgame basically. However, I wasn't really feeling like it, so I played rook c8 instead. My opponent goes queen to f3, and now I go queen to h5. The idea basically is to trade queens and play knight to a5 and get 2 bishops, because 2 bishops are good. And also, my opponent already moved the queen once, so if my opponent wants to take the queen, then the queen has to move twice. Okay, and then also this sets a pretty devious trap. It's kind of a dumb trap. I wasn't trying to set the trap. I didn't even see this move, but I was just lucky that it didn't work. G4 doesn't work for a reason, so you can try to pause the video and figure that out. But it doesn't work not because of knight takes g4, because then I can actually take first. I'm trying to discover attack. But I can take with the bishop first, attacking the queen, and then knight takes, because now now I have a concrete threat on h2. That's a checkmate. And I'm also going to take this knight. So I cannot play g4, instead white plays rook to d1, very normal move. I'll play knight to a5, attacking the bishop, takes. And now my opponent plays knight d to e2, which is a pretty solid move. Gets the knight out of the center, and also supports the knight on c3, and also takes away g3 from my knight. So this is a pretty solid move. And I thought my opponent was going to try to play g4 and e5 and get my knight really bad on e8. But he didn't do that. And instead, after I played b5, trying to go for b4 and taking this pawn, I was expecting g4, e5, a move like rook to d2, and then knight to d5. And if I play bishop to c6, then knight to d4, and this is a lot of threats, and white has a really good advantage with all this space. However, instead, my opponent played bishop to d4, which is just a pretty bad move because it allows b4. And knight to d5, I takes, and now my rook's on the 7th rank. And my opponent takes, so now I can take the knight and take my bishop, and I take a pawn, and we basically trade a bunch of pawns. However, I just have a pawn here. I'm not even up a pawn. And with all this kingside activity here, I could probably make a pretty comfortable draw. However, I saw that I had this intermezzo bishop takes h3, which is really cool because I can take a pawn and also ruin the kingside. And white cannot move the knight because that results in a checkmate in 2. So I was expecting rook to f2 because it protects the knight. And now I move the bishop to like e6, and then knight to d4, and then takes, and then knight takes f4, and I'm a pawn. However, these knights could get annoying. But instead, my opponent takes the bishop, I take the knight. She goes e5, I go rook takes b, I take a pawn, so now I'm a pawn, very, very cool. Rook d3, protecting both of these pawns, and now I go rook to e2. Just trying to stop f5, which would, like, do stuff. So I'm trying to stop f5 by attacking this e5 pawn. So now my opponent goes back to c6, and now I kind of go insane and play a5, which isn't the best move. I could play rook to c6 also. I mean, rook c instead, with the same idea of a5 and getting my rook to this part here. So I saw all this with knight to e3, and now I basically thought that this would be good. However, I didn't see that any clear way to make any progress because, which is kind of dumb to say because my rooks are literally here, and I can just do this, and this. Like there literally has to be something good here, even if I don't see it immediately. But instead, I played a5, which does the same thing, but it doesn't work anyways because my opponent just takes and plays rook d5, and also missed rook to d7, which looks kind of illogical because of rook to e3, but actually there is knight takes a5 and then e6, I think. Or actually, why can't I play rook to e3? The computer's saying this move, I don't actually understand it. Let's move on. Okay, so rook to d5, I missed this move, I thought that I had to move, but now I can attack this pawn, and now go here. I basically want to provoke f6 so I can move my king here, and my king I thought was pretty safe on h6. So now the rook's attacked, and my opponent's also really low on time, so I just thought if I make some sufficient threats, there's going to be a mistake at some point. And I also just realized that I still have thank you for 100 subscribers. Thank you for 100 subscribers. So knight to e2 check, knight to c3, attacking the rook, and now I go rook to e2 check, forcing the king to the back rank because this would step into a fork. So the king goes to g1. If king goes to f1, my plan was to play rook to a2, and after knight to c4, I could check, and then I could check again. And with all this, oh, actually, the king can't go there because of a fork, but I can check again, and now the rook cannot block because of trade, and then another fork. So the king has to move again, but this is also a fork, so I'm just winning a bunch of materials in that case. So the king has to go to g1, and now go rook to d8, threatening a checkmate. My opponent, well, threatening to go to stack on the d5, stack on the second rank. My opponent goes knight to c4. I go knight to e4, attacking the rook, and also attacking this thing here. I go here, and opponent cannot go here because of a checkmate, so it has to defend the first rank. Now I go here. Rook to d3, very strong move, infiltrating this position. Knight to d6, and now I go check, check. Here, now I'm threatening a check here, I'm threatening a check here. Nothing much to do anymore, because if takes, I just take, and I'm up a piece. e6 doesn't work because it's just a checkmate. My opponent just plays rook d1, and checkmate happens next. Okay, so I got a much-needed win in the 5th round. Now I have 3 out of 5. Now I'm up a bit of rating again. So in the next game, if I can win, then I'm actually getting quite a bit of rating, which is very nice. So I got 22-13, and I have white. So this is a pretty important game. Okay, so the game starts with the Caro-Kann, and I have a really good record against the Caro-Kann, but that's only because I only faced the Caro-Kann against like 1900s and 1800s. So we'll actually see how I do against this opening against a respectable player. No. I'm not saying that 1800s and 1900s aren't respectable, but That's like 200 points less than my rating, so I should be winning those games anyway. But let's just go into the game. We get this variation, the Tartakower. And my opponent plays this awkward move, knight to a6, but the whole idea is to go to d5. So I trade some pieces. Again, the entire idea is to trade enough pieces so that this pawn majority is better than this 4 versus 3 with doubled pawns. So here, I should actually just expand with the center because knight b4 isn't a problem due to c5, and I saw this, but I just panicked for no reason at all that these center pawns would just. Because there was one time where I played a blitz game where I pushed all these pawns and I pushed them too much and I lost them. But if I just push b3 and just keep it simple and don't go crazy with the pawns, this pawn like mass is still pretty strong, and I can push d5 when it works. I don't have to go crazy in a blitz game. But instead I go for this knight to g3 idea, trying to go to e4 and c5 or something. So I throw in this move queen to c2. And my reasoning for it was not just, well, it's attacking this pawn, but what was the reasoning? I don't know, and it's not a good move either. Okay, so we get g6, knight to e4, rook e1, bishop c4. I'm trying to trade so that I can open up this rook and also get rid of this pawn. If my opponent has to take up the pawn, then this would be an isolated pawn. So you might notice that my ideas here don't really make a lot of sense, and that's because they don't. Yeah. Okay, so my opponent plays f5, and my idea was to take, but I saw that after bishop takes d5 and knight to d2, now queen goes to g5, and this bishop's really good here. And although I have a pawn advantage, I can't really push it that much because now the rook is like here. So instead I go knight to d2 immediately. We get queen to c7, stepping out of the line of the rook. Knight to f3, we get trade of bishops. Okay, so now in this like sort of middle game slash end game, I still have this pawn majority. However, my opponent's doing a good job of stopping me from pushing it. So if I like already played c4 and b3, then I could just stack and try to play for d5. But that's going to be really hard now because I can't play c4 without weakening this pawn substantially. So now I try to play a4, and this is kind of a lazy move, and it's kind of it's just not very good because I was hoping that he would play a5, which is a move that like an 1800 would play, but my opponent's not an 1800. And the idea was to try to get him to weaken these pawns on the queen side and create some targets. But obviously he's not going to do that because it creates some targets. So he plays c5 instead, which is the best move. Now his queen's more active. I attack the rook, I attack the queen, but now my rook's on e5, which isn't actually doing anything. And I could run into some really nasty knight to d4 traps. Because it's like it's a fork, and if I take, then I lose my rook. And I have this fork, but not there. But this endgame is probably marginally, it's just equal, if not better for black because of the activity. So instead, I go queen to e2, supporting my rook. Now I go a5. It doesn't do anything, but I can make moves. It's not that I was like low on time either, but I had less time, so I just wanted to make some moves. And now my rook's over here, and it can't do anything. So what I should do now is just move it over here. And I play h4 first, which is an okay move. I'm trying to play h5 and make him uncomfortable. He plays h5, and now I play rook to b5, which is a pretty bad move because my idea was to make room for other pieces on e5, but when the rook's over here, it doesn't have anywhere else to go to, and it could get trapped really easily, which is kind of foreshadowing. And I'm also not even targeting this pawn. And an idea I had was to go to b4 and like stop knight to f4 and guard along the 4th rank and then go to a4, but that never ended up really happening because my opponent just attacks my queen. And now my queen has to go somewhere smart and not dumb, because if it goes somewhere dumb, I just lose. So the two places that I was thinking between were e3 and e5. Because, okay, so if I go to e3, then I saw that he could check me. And then he could, like, check me with the knight somewhere. And I could go here. and this would be good, but my opponent can also go to d3 or something, and uh, yeah. So this looked okay, and I also looked at queen to e5, which is a blunder, but I thought he would. I was expecting this. I didn't even see what he played in the game. I was expecting this, and now actually if he takes, then this is pretty good, or at least it's okay, because I'm threatening to take this. So he basically has to keep checking me, and it's probably going to end in a draw. So I played queen to e5 because it was kind of an impulsive move. I should have spent more time because I ended up making a really queen e5 ended up being a really bad move because I overlooked something. But if I just played a move like queen to f1, it's still pretty solid, and I just don't allow any checks or anything crazy like that. But instead, queen d5 is a really big blunder. So try to pause the video and see what does black do to punish this the best way to punish queen to e5, which looks like an okay move because it attacks the knight, not really because of this discovered attack, but it centralizes the queen, and that's really the only thing that's good about it. Okay, so the move he played is queen to c6, which I didn't even consider because it doesn't look like it does anything, but it does do something because it threatens knight to d3 and puts pressure on this rook that's really bad. So if I take, then he just takes the rook. If I go knight to d4, he just takes the knight, and then this is actually just a checkmate. Yeah, I cannot move the knight at all because this is just a checkmate. So that's actually really annoying. If I do nothing, he just wants to play knight to d3, removing the defender from the rook. This rook is, as you can see, really bad on b5. So rook b5 was a pretty bad move, just a step in the wrong direction. So what I was also worried about is moves like check. Okay, well, my plan was to move. I can't go here because of here either. One of my ideas was to play like if I do something, then he can check me, and then play queen to c4, and now he's threatening rook to h1 check, and queen to f1 and queen takes g2. So I thought after rook, yeah. So if I try to move the rook away, then I thought that he would check me, and then play queen to c4, and then threaten rook to h1 check and queen to f1, and also attack my rook. And here actually I have queen to b5 though. So I thought I had I have queen to b5, which means I'm fine, but I'm not because my opponent doesn't check me. So I thought this check was all there was to worry about here. I just didn't think that there was any other danger, which isn't very logical thinking, unfortunately. So he goes knight to h3, which is something I didn't see at all. And this is very strong because if I move the king here, he just checks me, and this rook here is really badly placed, and I kind of placed it there myself. And ironically, if you gave this rook to my opponent and told him that he could place it anywhere he wants, he'd probably put it here. So that's really sad. Okay, so I go king to h2, I lose this pawn, and now I'm just screwed. Yeah, my king is just too weak, and I can't do anything about it. So after a few more moves, queen just goes to g3, and I can't stop checkmate, so I resigned. So this game was like more or less equal for a long time until I made this bad decision to play rook to b5. So what should I have done instead? Well, this rook wasn't doing anything on this file, so if I can just move over here, and it's not like any of us can make basically any sort of progress, because if my opponent moves the knight, then I can check. And now queen's going to e5, and now queen e5 is really strong because rook d1 is no longer a check. So I should have played rook to e1, and game would probably end in a draw, honestly, because now like queen c6, I can just play normal moves. Queen is fine on b5 because queens are harder to trap than rooks. So yeah, if I played rook e1, just played normal moves, game would probably end in close to probably a draw. Okay, but anyways, I lost this game. Now we're on the last game. Okay, so now I'm black, and I play a young kid who's like 14 years old, and they had an under 14 and under like brilliancy prize, and my opponent got like tied for third. So very, very scary. And playing kids is just scary in general. And I used to be a kid, and I used to have that psychological advantage, but now I'm really old, so I don't have that anymore, which is unfortunate. Okay, so we get e4, c5, we get this again, and now it takes the queen, which was really unexpected. I've never seen this over the board in an actual game before. I only see this online, and I see it a lot, especially in Blitz and Bullet. And it basically just throws you off, and also it hopes for a pre-move when you lose the rook. Obviously, I'm not going to fall for that trick, but the problem is I don't actually... There's this really dumb line, which happened in the game, where white does this. And there was one game a long time ago where I basically lost really quickly because I didn't know what to do with this pin. So I looked at the computer, and low-depth computer said queen d4 is a great move. So I just started playing this in every single game. And the best thing to do for white is to take, and take, and take, and play this endgame. Because it's obviously good for white, because I have, like, isolated pawns. However, because it's Blitz, I actually have a good record in this opening, so I just kept doing it because it gave me success in Blitz. But that's just because I'm fast, not because the opening's any good. So, unfortunately, that means when I play in a real game with time, I'm really, really worried because I don't actually know how to get an advantage in this endgame because it doesn't exist. So I'm really, really worried now, and I didn't know any other moves because I didn't look at any other moves. So I was scared that if I played the moves like Bishop d7, it would just be really, really bad. But it's not. Bishop d7 is the best move, and I'll do this from now on. Because even though white has two bishops, black just has a normal position and doesn't have to worry about any double pawns if white takes, then you can just take. And in this version, it's better because there's no bishop to target this pawn, and there's just less things to worry about. Or I can keep queens on the board to have more winning chances. But I played queen to d4, and now I'm really, really worried because I kind of really want to win this game. Because first of all, my opponent's at 1900, I would lose a lot of rating if I draw. But also, in this event, there's they give you a $50 gift certificate to the bookstore if you get a score above 50%, which would be 4 out of 7 for me. So I really want to win this game so I can go to the bookstore. And also, like, there's also other stuff other than books, like a chess Rubik's Cube. They actually had this that I got from the bookstore. I actually just spoiled... Okay, I just spoiled the result of this game. But, yeah, they were really cool stuff. Like, also, they had a fidget spinner. And also gifted the fidget spinner to someone. Okay, but back to the game. I was really, really worried in this endgame. Because, like, how am I supposed to win? I don't have that many pieces. And I don't have a queen, and I just have weaknesses, and my opponent doesn't. So I was really, really confused what I was supposed to do. And I was just really worried that my opponent was just going to make a draw somehow, because just by making normal moves. And my opponent was also playing really, really fast, so I was worried that like she was really confident in this opening. And she probably is, because not a lot of people play this. Okay, so I make a threat on this pawn. Pawn goes to c4, I go rook d8. This is actually the wrong rook to move to d8, because when the bishop goes to f3, it like pins this rook, so if I can move this rook, then it gets out of the pin at least. And there's actually this really funny quote, which I should have put here, but there's like 5 games, so whatever. But whenever you're deciding which rook to put, you should come up with a decision. You should come up with a decision and then move the other rook, because you're always wrong. It's kind of like the thing where you plug in a USB. It's always wrong the first time, and then you fix it, you turn it around, it still doesn't work, and it was actually right the first time, it just didn't work. So it always takes more than 2 tries to plug in a USB cable. Unfortunately, in chess, you only get 1 try to move the right rook, and it rarely happens. It probably happens less than 50%, because everyone's bad at chess. Okay, so my opponent castles, and now I really need an idea, because if I don't, then we're going to see bishop to f3, knight c5 probably, rook d1, and I'm just not going to be able to do anything. So I was going to play rook d2 anyways, but I spent like 20 minutes before I played it because I was looking at this really interesting trick. It's not even a trick, with rook takes b2, knight takes b2, and then moving the knight somewhere so I can pin the knight and try to either win the knight, which would give me 2 pieces for a rook, or get somehow a good endgame. Even a rook endgame with the rook on the d file, because that's all I can really hope for. Normally, I wouldn't like to go into a rook endgame where I have to win, but from this position, that's like all that I can really hope for. So I ended up playing rook to d2, and I take. And now, okay, where do I move the knight? I can go to. My plan was to go to e4, but the problem is my opponent can play g4, knight d2, and then like takes, and then this is so complicated. This is so weird. And also, after knight to e4, my opponent can simply take and play rook a to e1, and I can't do this because of this. And I'm just down an exchange now. So I can't go to e4. I go to g4 instead, so that after it takes and takes, the rook can't attack the bishop. I was expecting here h3, knight to e5, bishop e2, and knight d7, and then knight to a4, and then takes and takes. And at least here I have like sort of a game where I can hope for stuff, because I didn't like this either, but I just hoped that my opponent would. My opponent was playing really fast, so I was hoping that she would play way too fast and not calculate all the lines, which did happen, fortunately for me. So she took, which is okay. She can still give up the exchange and then play this endgame, which white's probably still better in due to my pawn structure. But I do have a bishop with pawns on both sides of the board, so that gives me some sliver of hope. So h3 now kicks the bishop, which is fine. I move the bishop here. Now my opponent goes g4, and this is a step in the wrong direction. I was really happy when I saw g4. And the reason is I can take now. So in this position, I cannot take, because after rook to b1, bishop e2, my opponent just goes here, and both my bishops are under attack. I can't save them both. But now, after bishop f5, after I take, my opponent can no longer go to b1 because bishop is covered. So my opponent has to take, and now I take, and I win a pawn! Yay! Woohoo! Up a pawn. There's just one problem, the rook goes to d1 before me. So now I have to just hold on to these pawns for dear life and not lose any of them, because if I lose one of these pawns, then I'm never going to win. So I have to come up with a plan to save all of these pawns, and luckily I saw this idea of a5 and rook to a6, which would guard both pawns, and I could try to play a4 and trade a bunch of these pawns. Because if I can like trade 2 pawns for 3, then I have a 4 on 2. Okay, so we get rook d7, e6, and now my opponent plays c5 quickly. And my opponent had so much time. My opponent had like an hour and 15 minutes in this position. I'm not even joking. And I had like 20. So it wasn't looking good for me, but at least I was up a pawn. I could at least hope for stuff. I thought c5 was a good move at some point, but I wasn't expecting it immediately. I was expecting my opponent to like attack the pawn and then play c5. And then my rook's kind of stuck, and the rook's really good here. And all I can really do here now is like try to move the king over, but then I lose a pawn, so I have to make sure I win enough pawns so that I can lose these pawns to still be up a pawn, and it just gets really complicated. But since my opponent played c5 first, my opponent's not attacking any of my pawns, and that just gives me time to play a4 and trade some pawns. So if my opponent takes, then I can take and win this pawn. So my opponent plays b4, and now I play a3, which is a very important move. If my opponent plays a3 herself, then I'm cooked. Like, for example, now white's trying to win because of how strong this is and how weak the pawns are. The rook cannot move, basically. But once I play a3, this is now a backward pawn. So my opponent goes rook to b7, trying to stop rook to b8, but I go rook to d8. Now my rook gets on the open file. Rook goes to d4. We trade some pawns. I play king f8, trying to get closer to this pawn. Rook a4. Now my opponent we're on equal pawns, but my opponent cannot save this pawn. So takes, and now I take this pawn. Okay, and my opponent's still moving really, really, really fast, even in this like endgame, which is really, really tough to hold. I'd be uncomfortable holding this against like a player my strength. So I'm really surprised that she just didn't think at all. And I also had a phase where, like, a few years ago, where I just didn't know what to do at all in endgames. I just played really fast and hoped for the best, and then the best never happened. It was always the worst because I didn't think. So you have to calculate a lot in endgames. That's really important. You also have to slow down, especially when you have an hour and 10 minutes on the clock. So no shade to my opponent. She's obviously a kid. All the kids play fast, but if you slow down, then it's a lot easier to get better because you won't make silly mistakes. It wasn't even that my opponent made a mistake. It's just that There was a bunch of like inaccuracies that added up over time, which is ironic because she didn't use time. But okay, king g2 here, here, here. I start pushing pawns, and my opponent doesn't stop me. It's really hard to defend this endgame anyways, but moving fast didn't help either. So I just played. Okay, so I play f5, and now I have these 3 pawns, and now okay, I I evade the checks, and now e3, and now I have these 2 pawns here, and I win. So the yeah, king g4, and the rook's just trapped. Okay, so I win the 4th game. I have 4 out of 7 overall. I gained 4 rating points, so now I'm officially 2116 USCF, which is a square number. It is 46 times 46. Woohoo! So interesting. My favorite rating of all time. I wish it was 2200, but that's probably not going to happen for a few years. I have one more tournament, which is the Danker tournament, which I qualified for in March. That'll probably be a fun tournament. Hopefully, I don't completely embarrass myself. It's mainly just I'm mainly just going to go there for fun because Danker is probably one of my favorite tournaments because everyone there is like my age, and I like talking to people who like the stuff that I like. So I'm really excited to go there, but first I have to lock into this math camp, which is going to take 4 weeks, which is why we probably won't see a lot of uploads from this channel. Maybe though. So thank you so much for watching. If you've watched the entire video, then why? But thank you so much, and thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video, which I have no idea when it's going to be. Bye.